I kind of wanted to start with because I don't think a lot of people realize that we've been working together now for the last almost 4 years. It feels like I guess it's only three. Um,
Yeah, it's pushing 4. Yeah.
um, and you
I've
know,
still never met you, which is the weird part. Like, it's a running joke around here. It's like I talk
yeah.
to you almost every day, but we've never actually met. One of these days, I'm gonna fly out to Vegas.
Well, that would be great. I would not say no to that. It's the same thing with Atlas in general. Like all of us, we've never met in real life. We're in various different countries. The whole network is just spread globally. It's kind of
Yeah.
like the status of new business. It's one of the things I like the best about like our relationship is it feels like we're not only pushing the frontiers of resin, but also pushing the frontiers of business structures. Um,
Yeah,
and
we can run a business, build a business entirely in your home.
Yeah, oh, and then all on Discord, a free platform like where we're recording
Mhm.
this interview now. Um,
Yeah.
I think we may no, I guess we did reach out initially via email, but it quickly just moved to Discord, and then it's been Discord ever since.
Yeah,
So,
Discord's way better, so
the initial Vulcan Kickstarter 3 years ago got all of this, literally kickstarted and going. We've been selling Vulcan Standard now for 2+ years.
it went through about 3 or 4 iterations, though, you know?
The
That one was in development from the get-go, as we got feedback coming in and we've modified and tweaked and brought in new raw materials, and that one I'm actually pretty proud of that one because I think what we ended up with is a really high quality standard resin.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, yeah. I print with a lot of resin. It's all I want to print with anymore. Like, anytime I have to deviate, even with other, resins from you, I always end up back at standard because I know exactly how it acts, and I very much like that resin. Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
Even the way that we got to it, though, I think is indicative of just the process that we've had of constant feedback between the community and you, and it has been really appreciated that we've been able to work our way towards the optimal, material.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which brought us now to tabletop. The first eatable resin. I got to say, you told me when you first sent it to me, you thought maybe it was going to be too flexible and you weren't sure. And I started throwing things with it, and it was just silly. Like,
Yeah, well, the whole like I said, the whole point to that tabletop was to try and get a tabletop resin that was more economical, so it wasn't, super expensive, but still was eatable, like you say, and strong. And so I tried a lot of different ways first. I spent 6 months trying to do these weird additives, which is like really soft and really kind of what were we calling it? It's like almost it was really flexible but had no tear strength. I don't know. It was like soft brittle.
yeah.
So we went through a lot of iterations on that one. I don't know if you remember, but we started
Oh
back in like
yeah.
RD 5740 a couple years ago. Just we were starting to poke around at it. But yeah, I'm really happy with where we ended up with it. Completely new raw materials. So that's a ground up rebuild of what we originally called Evolution resin. On my site, and completely ground up rebuild. I'm very happy with where we ended up. From a formulation standpoint, it's on point. Like it really is the best bang for your buck. It's not like fillers and cheap stuff to try and kind of get us there. It's a legit formula. So I'm really proud of that one too. And I think it's only been out for you just did your pre-launch, right?
Yeah, we pre-launched it in January, and so it's been out for a little over a month. And so far, I've had overwhelmingly positive response back. Like everybody's come back with like, I would either like more, or hey, I'm a small printer, so like I don't need more yet, but I eventually will. So that's
Right.
always nice to hear.
Yeah, I moved over one of my merchants to it who's drinking it, so that's really nice. Once get steady business going with it, it's a lot easier it's a lot easier to bring in bulk and make sure the prices are steady and everything's golden.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the things that's really nice too about tabletop is that it is a price performant resin. Like it's not something that's going to absolutely destroy your bank, and
Right.
I appreciate that. Do you happen to have any of the specific numbers on that? I know that the engineering types are always interested in that.
Specific numbers on the tabletop?
Yeah, or is that only on Hercules that you have right now?
No, I have them. Give me a second here.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Um,
I know the engineer
so
types are going to ask.
yeah, I like to consider tabletop. I call it like a non-brittle resin. It is flexible to a certain extent, but it's really not meant to be bent. It's meant to have high detail and be able to use and drop it. And it's a lower has resin, which is really nice.
Oh yeah,
But the tensile strength on that one is like 23 to 25, 100 psi. Elastic The modulus on it is 1,000 psi, so that kind of gives you that's an important number. That kind of gives you an idea of how easy it is to bend, and that's going to become important when we start talking about the thermal resin here in a bit. So the lower the modulus number, the easier it is to bend at room temperature, and
Okay.
then the higher it is, the more stiff it is, right? So that's 1,000 psi. For reference, well, I'll just wait on that. But yeah, your
Yeah.
elongation on that is like 12 to 15%, and then it's got your standard short D around 72. Decent linear shrink.
Nice.
So, and that one has broad spectrum photo initiators in it, so it's designed to work with um, pretty much any LCD, DLP, laser printer that's out there. So,
Oh yeah. No, I've been real happy
um,
with it in terms of its exposure times too. It's basically it's 0.1 seconds longer for me compared to standard. Like it's just right
it's
on
just
center.
slightly.
Yeah, just ever so
What's
slightly
funny
more.
is it'd be like if we wanted to go that. This is why we go back and forth on so many things because it's like if we want to get that extra little bit out of it, it's like it's a slight modification change. Maybe I make 2% more of this and 2% less of this, but you don't know what you're giving up. It's always give and take. It's like, well, I don't want to lean into the speed and then just maybe just a little not quite strong enough. So that's funny how I just it's funny because I could do it. It's like I'm not going to. I like where it's at.
Yeah, no, same. Like I've learned now from, this iteration with you that like it is little tiny changes, then all of a sudden something that you didn't wasn't happening before suddenly is, or vice versa. So
Yeah, that's everything affects everything in UV photopolymer, and
yeah, and sometimes
yeah,
not in intuitive ways.
right,
So
yeah,
speaking of Hercules, I mean this one was we first teased Hercules in the initial Kickstarter, and then it's been, I feel like, I remember you telling me on multiple formulas on various Vulcan attempts, like this just doesn't feel like a Hercules candidate to me. I think
right,
was what you said.
yeah,
Like
because you kind of swung for the fences with the branding. It's like I was kept making these formulas, and I'm like, is it Hercules though? Like, is it? You know what I mean? I feel I wanted to be proud about what we put in that bag. So I was like, I don't care if we have to kick it down the road for 3 or 4 years. What we have to come up with has to be Hercules. If you're gonna stick with that brand and those fancy bags you bought. So, yeah, I'm really proud of where this one ended up. So that's what I'm calling the multi-purpose thermal resin,
yeah,
and the Hercules brand is, I think, finally fulfilled.
it is unlike anything that I've ever printed with. Um, and like one of the things that, and I love TGM7. I have long considered it the Cadillac of resins. But my main complaint with it, with our supports in particular, is that I'd go to remove models and it would like not pop off the way standard resins, and even tabletop, which is more, ABS like or flex like, the supports just pop off. Hercules does that, and that was something that I really appreciated you spending the time to make happen. That's why I made that video of it on the Kickstarter page so that people can see, like, hey, you're gonna get this insane durability without having that, like, having to almost cut the supports off. It's
Yeah,
just a
so I don't
thing.
have a ton of experience with TGM7. Obviously, I have printed with it in the past, and I know that based on the numbers, I know how it performs, and it has more of a springy nature. But we definitely spent a lot of time trying to make sure, and that really comes down to green strength, and getting it to where you have the nice green strength that you need to hold on to the model properly, and you don't have to go too thick with your supports. So we've been playing that balance because Atlas obviously built a business around having beautiful supports, but just enough green strength to hold on to the model, but not too much where you're glued to the model with even just tiny touch points. So it's a fine balance to strike there, and then of course the strength is developed in the post process, in the thermal cure or in the light cure, whatever you choose to do. But obviously, thermal cure is what gets you that really strong, tough material.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, like the thing is that one of the big differences that I personally noticed in the having both in the farm is that Vulcan tabletop, I got to be more gentle when I'm in the green state, like super thin flag bits. I got to make sure I'm more careful because they might tear. when I'm taking them out of the supports. Whereas with Hercules or with Vulcan Standard, I can just kind of rip the damn thing out of the supports. Uh,
Right.
it's one of those noticeable. You touch a lot of resin, you get used to how things feel. Um,
Yeah.
and it was like an immediate notice for me in terms of how the resin felt in my hand. And we're not even getting into the cured part. We're like just literally getting them out of the supports because some of the other flex resins that I've used from random other companies, they're great when you fully cure them, but holy crap, do you have to be careful getting things out of the supports because you can just so easily tear things.
Yeah. That's why, I'm not really sure this resin falls into a flex resin, but it's not. I think it's the closest thing I would categorize it as is like a multi-purpose flex type of material, but it's really so different because it wasn't designed to be a flex resin. It was designed to have really high tear strength and be thermal curable and be non-cytotoxic, and it was designed to do all of these things. And then it's like we almost stumbled upon it. It was like, oh, okay, well, it's actually once you thermal cure it, it is pretty much a flex resin, even though it's not really what we were shooting for. It's got all these other features. It's formable, and it's very unique. So I don't know. Maybe we kind of created a new category of material, but um, it's like nothing else I've played with either.
Yeah, well, and then one of the things that's important in terms of like unlike anything else on the market right now is that this isn't just for minis. Like you mentioned formable, the video that you sent me, and we'll have this one up later for folks, where you printed that part, you put it in like hot water to get it hot, like after you printed and cured it, and then you like formed it
Yeah,
around your arm, and then it held the shape. Like there is
yeah.
so much
It holds
more.
form pretty well. Yeah, it does quite. That's why I'm calling it multi-purpose, and it's because it will find its way. It will find very unique applications. I'm certain of it, and because it's non-cytotoxic, you're going to start poking into the medical device applications, and you can start poking into skin contact applications. We still have a lot of testing to do as far as all of that goes, but being a zero as far as cytotoxicity goes after thermal curing really opens it up for so many applications. And tabletop miniatures is of course one of those. And I think the formability of it is very unique. And yes, when I did that video, it was I thermal cured it. I think at 250 for hour and a half or something like that. Um, and then yeah, once it was thermal cured and all those bonds were nice and strong, I put it in boiling water and I formed it around my hand as it velcroed it and basically made a
Like a
wrist
splint.
brace,
Yeah.
like a splint, like a custom wrist brace. Yeah, and it worked out way better than I was expecting. I was like, wow, that really does form. And if you form it when it's still hot and then hold it, and as it cools down to room temperature, it'll stay there. And then if you want it to go back to normal, all you got to do is heat it back up, and it'll flatten back out. So or go back to its original cure state, I should say.
Cool. I mean, see, like, I feel like there's just, I can't wait to see what the community does with this resin, because I know they're going to come up with all manner of things. Um,
Hmm.
because there's just nothing else that's really like it on the market. Can you talk a little bit about like the different thermal curing schedules that we have? Because that's just another thing that I think people don't fully understand. Like, what is it like? Is it just longer and hotter, or like what exactly is going on with these different schedules for curing and the different material properties?
Yeah. So if you want to accentuate elongation, you want to cure at a lower temperature for a longer period of time. So 200 to 250 in there for an hour to 2 hours. That's you're accentuating elongation. You're kind of slowly letting those things all bond together, and we get up at elongation up above 30%, and your tensile strength will increase as well along with that. And if you want to increase your hardness, you can light cure first before you do anything. If you want it to be more hard and rigid, you don't have to light cure first. You don't have to light cure at all if you don't want to. But adding light cure into the schedule will always increase rigidity and will always increase hardness. So if you want like the maximum rigidity and stiffness of the um, Hercules, then you would do like light cure for maybe 5 minutes, and then I would thermal cure at 275 to 300 degrees, no more than 300. And 300 degrees for 15 minutes, you're going to get max rigidity out of it, and still quite nice elongation. You'll still be above 20 to 25%. So, but you'll be maximizing your tensile strength. I believe it was around 3,000, 3,500 maxed out at, and so those are kind of the differences. You're trying to feel for what your application is. If you need something more hard and rigid, then you want to light cure first, and you want to cure at a higher temperature. If you want something to be more of a flex resin, that's what you want it to be, or that moldable resin like I used it for, then you want to be lower temperatures, longer period of time.
Okay, okay. Now I know that one of the other things that was nifty about Hercules, especially post thermally cured, I think it was only thermally cured. You told me that this would happen. Is that you can actually, it can be around water, right? Like, could we maybe use this for doing finally 3D printed resin stuff for our fish tanks?
Yes, I think you can. So it's non-cytotoxic once it's thermal cured. So you have to thermal cure it. Don't light cure and toss it in the fish tank and expect everything to be fine. But if it's thermally cured all the way through, then you have caused all those bonds to link. At that point, you're reaching non-cytotoxicity, and you should be fine putting it into a water tank. We are doing saltwater and freshwater testing now,
Okay.
um, and it looks like it's kind of peaked out at about 3 to 4% absorption, and it's been just holding steady there. We're gonna. It's unfortunately there's no way to test this other than to test it, and so we've only been doing it for about 7 days now. We're gonna test it every Friday and see how she goes, but we fully expect it to kind of plateau at 4% absorption, which basically that's how much of the water is kind of working its way into the system, and it should be fine for 3D printing things in water tanks. I would just recommend post curing it at 275 for an hour, and you should be good to go.
Sweet. So the other thing that we wanted to let people know that nobody knows about now is that Hercules isn't just one resin. It's actually a new line of resins. So
Yes,
what's the other one? The one that we want to introduce people to?
right. So the new one is going to be I guess we'll call it the rigid variant. It's more of an ABS type material. So if you want to think of it like multi-purpose flex and then multi-purpose rigid. So the rigid will be the new material, and that is going to be somewhat of the opposite of the flex variant, of course, where the flex variant is focusing more on high tear strength and flexibility and elongation. The rigid variant is going to be focusing on that high tensile strength, more rigid, still tough, still even bendable to a certain extent. We're looking at about 15% elongation and like 5,000 psi tensile strength compared to
Oh
the
wow.
yeah. So it's much stronger as far as that goes. It'll also be quite a bit more plug and play, I guess would be the word. Much easier to use. It's it's a very easy resin. I think I don't. And I've tested all the pre-supported models from you and Loot Studios, and I haven't ran into any issues at all. So it can handle much lighter supports than the Flex variant will be able to. It's going to be a bit faster. I'm at about 3 seconds on the Ultra. 2.5, almost 2.5 if I'm using ACF film, but I like 3 seconds on FEP, and ACF seems to be working just fine. Really sharp detail. And for longer prints. So obviously, we're testing at 20 hour prints now and making sure that we're having nice consistent color all the way through. So I guess to be more of an ABS type for the rigid variant, still thermal cured. There is one distinct different that we should go over though, is the flex variant. You can go right into the oven, no issues. The rigid variant, you'll have to light cure first before you thermal cure, and that's going to
Okay.
be the only kind of difference there. And that's just to harden the shell, so we don't
It's
get
like
any cracking
searing
in the.
basically.
Yeah, you want to harden out the shell with the rigid variant, so all those, so you increase your bond strengths, and then when you do the thermal cycle, if you do the thermal cycle, you do not have to, but if you do the thermal cycle, if you're choosing to do that, um, then the shell is hard and it'll cycle through without causing any surface damage.
Sweet. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to help us better explain to folks, and we'll have all of the documents for everybody attached to this so that they can look specifically at it if they want. And
Yeah. That
th-
reminds me, I gotta get you over that, I gotta get you the rigid variance, technical data sheet. I'll do that right after we hang up here. I'll get that taken care of.
Sweet. Well, man, it's been great. I can't wait to see what else we make. Actually, the last thing that I wanted to have you touch on before I forget, the there's been a lot of talk in the community about ACF film versus FEP, and this is the first time that we've really had a definitive, like, this prints, this doesn't. Do you know, like, what is it you've really seen? Because you've done more of this comparison than I have.
Yeah, well, particularly with the Flex variant, it seems to like to stick to FEP much more than the ACF film, and it's kind of like night and day. Now, it doesn't mean you can't use FEP. I've been using it and printing with it fine, but I get a much significantly less um, peel force from the ACF film and even PFA. I have some here. I've been testing PFA as well, and PFA seems to be much better than FEP. I don't know if maybe they're getting. I don't remember this ever being a problem with R&D for the last several years. I don't know if they're getting cheap with the FEPs or maybe just stuff is just it just likes it. I don't know, but anyway,
All
yeah,
right.
there's a significant difference, but the rigid variant doesn't seem to have that problem. So maybe it's just that the soft nature of the material when it's green that likes the FEP as far as the flex variant goes.
Okay. I mean, it's just like normally there's so much black magic in resin printing. To have something that's like clear cut is just rare. So it's like, oh yeah, we got to bring this part up. Like, hey.
Did you sent me that video, that new stuff that's like electro like shaking the vat or whatever to like release the print from the film?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was just some like exterior device from a company. Like I don't think there's any way that that's gonna sell. It's like $600.
Well, I'm curious to try it. It might sell. They'll sell one. They'll sell one to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
because I'm like, how much difference does that really make?
Well, I know that Nico from Concepts 3D, who was working on the Athena printer, he's had some ideas about installing like little air puffs underneath the LCD to do exactly that. So like the idea is sound. If you can break the suction forces between the FEP and the LCD, that
Hmm.
basically just helps it release more quickly with
Yeah,
less force.
yeah, it's interesting tech.
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
I think that that's just one of those like I don't even know. Like I think you need like an inference pattern of pressure, and I don't know how you do that with the current configuration of printers.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look into it some more. I just found it interesting since we were having that FEP thing. I
Oh yeah,
was like,
definitely.
huh, maybe I'll give that a shot.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and here's to another 3 years of iterative resident development.
Sounds good to me, man. Let me know if you have any more questions.
I will. Have a good one.
Later.